Get back more onto Victor Osimhen a little bit later. I want to read something I was sent by a journalist, very well-connected journalist at Arsenal, but in mid-March. I reached out to him and said, who will Arsenal sign as their next striker in your view, based on what you're hearing? And he said here that he said the people I'm talking to say it all depends on how prolific. He's also an Arsenal fan, this journalist, but he said we are in front of goal over the next 10 to 15 games, the remainder of the season. He says smash goals in, we get a cheaper option. He says here, like a Jimenez or a Sesko, struggle, and we may then go and splash the cash on an older striker like a Victor Osimhen. So it doesn't surprise me personally to see Arsenal going down this route, because reportedly this is what Arsenal planned for. They scored 91 goals last season. They actually, 2 seasons running, they've broken their own Premier League record for goals being scored. I do think there's an argument for needing someone that can come up trumps in those really tight and tough games where you might only get not even a half chance. You might get a quarter of a chance and you need someone to bury it. I actually think Benjamin Sesko can do that. I actually really rate him, a bit like David. This season, I probably watched him play 7 or 8 times, but I probably watched him play 20 times, 25 times over the last few years. I think there's an absolute quality football player in also, there.
If you read about him as well, he's always been very highly touted, like by most like footballing youngster watchers. I don't know what you want to call them, but
yeah, no, so he has, and I think I think whenever your club is linked to a player, always try and look at scouting reports and articles before you are linked, because what will now happen is there'll be Arsenal-based websites and accounts that will write all the great things about it. It's good to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, in my opinion. But so for me, I'm not surprised to see this, because Arsenal did keep scoring goals towards the back end of last season, and I think what Arsenal are doing, as much as they're going to probably spend big again, there's still a budget to a certain degree. And I think if you can pick up a Benjamin Sesko, who I think will add, I think they can score more goals again next season, Arsenal, I'm not talking about score over 100 goals, but they might be able to add 10 goals to their Premier League tally and be a 100-goal scoring team. And I think Benjamin Sesko can help them do that. But I think where Arsenal are going to invest more of their money this year, if they're going cheaper up front, is supporting those wing positions, because Saka needs, I don't even think Saka needs cover. I think Saka needs someone to genuinely challenge him for his position, which clubs need to do. And I think they're going to spend big on their midfield. I think they're going to go. I know that Newcastle fans keep saying it isn't happening. I think they might go and spend the money on someone like a Bruno Guimaraes. And I think I do get what you're all saying. I don't think it's enough. But like I said about Spurs signing Timo Werner, say Sesko happens on the 1st of June, I wouldn't be someone straight away go, well, Arsenal haven't done enough. I need to wait and see what else they do, because if they bring in a Bruno Guimaraes or a Frankie de Jong, and then they bring in, I want to say Neto, but Neto gets injured a lot. So they bring in someone that plays in a wide position. I mean, there's talk of bloody Rashford, right? So they bring in a Rashford, or they bring in an Elise and a Sesko and someone like a Frankie de Jong. Then I feel as though they've strengthened their squad. They've probably added more goals as a collective, and it may be enough to push them over the line next year. And we're still, by the way, talking about them competing against a City team that could walk away. I mean, City could walk away this summer having signed people like Kimmich and the like themselves. So I don't think it's a bad bit of business for Arsenal. I do get the challenge that it isn't someone ready-made. But as I say, I'm going back, 2.5 months ago now. I was told by someone really well connected to Arsenal that if they carried on scoring, it would be a striker like this. So at least it feels like it's in line with Arsenal's plans, as opposed to sort of a knee-jerk reaction to something, which I do think is important. Igal, welcome back to the show, mate. Thank you very much for joining us. So we're just actually talking about Arsenal and this news today that Benjamin Sesko has reportedly agreed to sign your club if Arsenal bid the money. What's your take on bringing him in?
I'm just looking at the bigger picture, and I kind of realize that Isaac obviously is the guy that we want in the Premier League. Newcastle don't seem to be wanting to sell him. Ivan Toney, we've moved away from him. And then you look at the rest of the guys that we're looking at, like Gyökeres, not really too convinced about the price tag that they're trying to say for him. So it makes sense if we're going to spend 100 million in the midfield and potentially spend another spend another 60 to 30 million across the defense and another forward player coming in. Find a bargain in the striker position, a player who's 20 years old, raw, and he's going to be a project. That's the sad part. I didn't want a project striker. I wanted somebody ready-made. But when you look at it, who's out there that's ready-made? You drop 100 million pounds on Victor Osimhen, and then you look around and you're going to say to yourself, you might leave yourself short in other positions, even though you know Victor Osimhen is going to be that guy. You look at the left wing position. You look at the midfield position. If we invest heavily in those areas, and we get a young Benjamin Sesko, and he's a 6'4" pacey, striker that can add an element to our game that we don't have. So as you can tell, Terry, I've been trying to think. I've been looking at it more and more, and I'm starting to get more warmed up to it. But personally, I'm still one of those guys. I wanted Isaac. If we could have got Isaac, it would have been great. But if you can't get Isaac, get somebody who's 2 years younger than him that has a similar mold, just not as good as a passer. That's what it seems like. That's the only negative that I see from this guy right now. He's very raw, and he's maybe not as good as a passer as some of the other strikers that we were looking at. But overall, could be a really good bargain. If Mikel Arteta did what he did with Havertz, little do we know, maybe he could turn Benjamin Sesko into the next top striker in the league.
The next Haaland.
I don't want to say Haaland because I think he's more technically gifted than Haaland. Maybe the next Ibrahimovic.
Listen, I think there's talent in him. I think he's really talented. I think would be a tremendous signing for Arsenal. I really do. It may not be the one that gets everybody absolutely buzzing, thinking, wow, this is going to be that difference maker. But there's been so many Arsenal signings in recent years, from Ben White through to Kai Havertz, where it always gets laughed at, but it always seems to work. So I always feel like, it doesn't mean you can't criticize it if you don't like it, but I feel like you need to tread with a little bit of trepidation.
I know David's here. He watches a lot of Bundesliga. Back into the season in the Bundesliga, he was on fire. Man scored 11 goals, going crazy.
I've wanted Sesko since 2020.
Yeah?
It's been 4 years, and he's still a great player.
I seen Chelsea were linked to him. I think the pace is the main part, Terry, and the finishing ability. Did you see this goals? I know you have Y Scout, Terry. You probably seen, if you see this guy's goals, left foot, right foot, outside the box, he can carry the ball. I'm starting to get sucked in already. Big pause, but you know what I mean.
In the last 15 games of the season, I think he scored in 10 of the last 15 games of the season. I think he scored in the last 7 games on the bounce. He hit ridiculous form in the back end of the season. I'm not too sure what happened at the beginning.
He wasn't playing, Terry.
He was on the bench.
Joined the club. He wasn't playing much at the beginning. Of the season.
There we go. So he's been
in 16 starts, 13 goals.
That return is good. Again, I can't be a hypocrite. Man United have been linked with him a number of times, and I've advocated for signing him. I remember watching him play against Liverpool a season or two ago, and I just thought he was tremendous. Again, raw, but tremendous. And United are linked to him. I've been linked to him again now. The only issue I had with getting him now is we've already got Rasmus, that's similar age, young, raw, needs developing. I think we actually do need somebody that's a little bit older, that is more experienced. But with Arsenal, they score enough goals. And you actually think about it last year, Saka and Martinelli didn't have the seasons up front we probably all expected. If I was a betting man, it was Saka maybe. If I was a betting man, or I do like a little flutter, would I put a bet on Martinelli scoring more goals next season than the one he's just had? Probably.
Yeah.
If I was a betting man, would I bet that Kai Havertz starts the season a lot better than the first 4 months this year because he's found his confidence? Probably. So I don't think it's a bad bit of business. But viewers,
let me ask you this, Terry. You have that stat app. What is his finishing rate? Can you find that out for me? Because compare him to maybe an Isaac or Ivan Toney or what do you call it, Victor Osimhen, and you might be surprised. His finishing might be up there with those guys, because Arsenal are looking for somebody to finish the chances. Because let's be honest, we create a lot of chances. We need moments players, obviously, but if this guy can finish chances with his left foot, with his right foot, with the ability that he has, it's basically like a 6'4" Leandro Trossard with pace. I'll take that any day.
I think I read earlier it was like 30% conversion rate.
Igao is gas. I like it when Igao's excited. I always like an excited Igao. It's
Terry,
always fun to see.
I had a 30-minute ride home. I was listening to everything about Benjamin Sesko. I'm hyped, man. I'm slightly hyped.
I bet you are. You're brilliant. I love it, Gal. Right. So last season, I'm just making sure it's all based on league form and not Jesus Christ. Sorry. I want to make sure it's all based on the league form of last year. I've done it per 90 minutes as well. So how can Ivan Toney be on nothing last season in the Premier League? He must have scored a goal in the Premier League. Oh, here we go. So shooting accuracy. Put Kai Havertz in there with Ivan Toney, Osimhen, and Sesko. So this is per 90 minutes in their respective leagues. Kai Havertz was 54%, Ivan Toney 54%, 60% for Osimhen, 59% for Benjamin Sesko. Conversion rate 25% for Kai Havertz, 25% for Toney, 22% for Osimhen, 33% for Benjamin Sesko. So in terms of conversion rate, it is better. Yes, it is. It is better.
We had Isaac in there as well.
Yeah. Let me throw Isaac in there.
Yeah.
Let's have a little look.
Gal, before you jumped on, I was saying the same thing you said pretty much, that if I was an Arsenal fan, I would want Isaac instead of a Sesko. I'd want a proven, not a project player, someone that can come in straight away.
Force a club to sell a player if they don't.
No, I know. I'm just saying, hypothetically, if I was an Arsenal fan, that's what I would, be asking you guys to go and do. Of course, you can't force them to sell, especially if it's Isaac's on a 4 or 5 year contract. Obviously, Newcastle have all the power, but I feel that would be the difference for you.
Well, you know something? If we get this guy who's 20 years old for that price tag that they're talking about, potentially 45, maybe rising to like 60 mil max, guys, we still have the money to go drop 100 million on a midfielder. That might mean Bruno Guimaraes or somebody else. Wouldn't it be more scary that this Arsenal team adds another 100 million pound midfielder to that front line? Because let's be honest, how many good strikers are out there for 100 million? Not many, but midfielders, you could find a lot of good midfielders for that kind of price.
So on Alexander Isak, his shooting accuracy was 67%. So 67% of his shots were on target. Crazy. Conversion rate 32%. So I'm not going to, when it comes to like 1%, 2%, like their conversion rates are similar, but his shooting accuracy compared to all the other strikers is significantly higher than all of them. Now I want to put this into like perspective. I'm going to put Erling Haaland in there, who's probably the best finisher in the Premier League. I think most of us would agree. Wait for it to load. His shooting accuracy, doesn't surprise anybody, is 60%. His conversion rate is 27%. So again, all of them have got. I mean, Victor Osimhen is actually the lowest at 22% conversion rate. So maybe David is onto something. I haven't watched enough of Napoli to have, but maybe there's something in that. You are talking.
That's why I'm worried about Chelsea, Terry. Chelsea, don't be surprised if Chelsea go and try to do a pivot and get Sesko themselves, because they're always looking for strikers.
Chelsea are looking at Benjamin Sesko. Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal are all looking at him.
I think Man United, with your recent investment in Rasmus Højlund and your new ownership, I don't know if they go and go in for Sesko right away, but Chelsea have been looking at Sesko before they even signed Jackson. So if they don't drop the money on Osimhen, I think once again we're going to find ourselves in a situation where Chelsea and Todd Bowley, they might try to copy our homework and go and grab one of our players.
It's not copying your homework, is it? If you've literally just sat there and said Chelsea have been looking at this guy for time, but we're copying your homework.
Listen, it sounds better. The delivery sounds better. Let it be. Anyways, you get what I mean, though. Chelsea, I view Chelsea as a threat because of the financial money, but the fact that we're in Champions League and neither of you guys are in Champions League, that could give us an advantage. And the situation that our club finds ourselves in,
we'll just give them more money.
The fact that our club is in a better situation to succeed and push on to maybe compete for major honors right now compared to your clubs might entice players to join us over yourself. So I'm quite positive.
We'll pay the release clause. We'll pay 10 million over the release clause and spread it.
No, but you could pay more. But if the player wants to go to Arsenal and the clubs are willing to accept whatever, either way, he will join Arsenal.
I'd agree. Currently, it'd be better for him to join Arsenal just because it's less of a,
I wonder what this means for Jesus. I wonder what this means for Jesus.
He's bad.
Because if Jesus leaves,
it's not good.
If Jesus leaves, that's even worse for you guys, because that means not only are we going to invest in a striker, we're going to potentially go and get another forward player to play across the front three.
Cool,
but I'll get back Gabriel Jesus. I know you don't like him, David, but if I'm Arsenal, I'm getting rid of Reece Nelson and Nketiah ever before Gabriel Jesus, because he's not prolific, Jesus, but he is an exponentially better football player than Eddie Nketiah and Reece. And this is where I think Arsenal, if you can, the only reason you might have to get rid of Gabriel Jesus is because of the promises you made him. He'd be the main number 9, he'd be a starter, where it looks as though he's going to end up being at Arsenal in the same position that he was at Man City, where he's playing in 3 different positions, left, right, and through the centre, and he's on the bench. But if you can convince him to stay, which you may be able to, that must be better than keeping Nelson and Eddie Nketiah, who are pretty impotent when it comes to trying to penetrate the opponent's attack. They're pretty flat in that way.
Opportunities can arise later on in the transfer window where we can get money for all those guys, potentially Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, and potentially Gabriel Jesus. And if we can do that, I wouldn't be surprised if Gabriel Jesus is off the books next season and we go and get somebody who's naturally plays across the front 3 rather than Jesus, who is going to be on higher wages, probably one of our higher earners, and he's not going to be guaranteed a spot. And the club might be looking at that and saying to themselves, we've already grown past the likes of Zinchenko and Jesus, who we bought 2 years ago, because we're in a different stage already.
Emmanuel Drip here, Gal, says, what are you talking about next, Ibrahimovic?
I'm talking about the height. I'm talking about his different abilities to shoot, from the distances he shoots from, the ability that he has with his left and his right. The only thing that Ibrahimovic had at that age, different to what he has right now, is Ibrahimovic was more physical than Sesko. Don't come at me with that BS. What are you doing?
It. This here says Sesko reminds me of Darwin Núñez at Benfica.
No, he doesn't.
I remember when I was like Egal and I saw the striker scoring from outside the box with his left and his right, and I thought I had the next big thing, and now I've got 50 odd big chances missed in 2 years.
Hey,
but that super chat though, Darwin Núñez at Benfica was really good. So that's
he nearly won like the European Golden Boot at Benfica, and everyone was like, oh,
he was very, very good.